Hello and welcome everybody to today's session on Z Access TV. And my name is Leah Zalams. I'm your host and the founder and lead coach for Z Access Leadership Consultancy. And this channel is going live to YouTube, to LinkedIn and Facebook. So if you're chiming in, do say hello. Let us know where you are watching and where you're based, and certainly do pop any questions or comments in the comments where you are, and we will endeavour to answer them. And today I have the absolute pleasure of speaking with Judith-Rose Max, or JR, of Mirato Coaching, and she is also known as the CEO Maximiser. And welcome, JR. So pleased to have you today.
Thanks for having me, Leah. I'm very excited to be here. This is my first live streaming on all these platforms, so it's awesome to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
It is super awesome, and it's great to have that opportunity to serve our audience in a way, in bite-sized pieces. That's really what the function of Z Access TV is, to provide interviews and resources for small business owners, for women in business, on the topics of leadership, sales and mindset. And just to put some context for our viewers and listeners, let me just read out a little bit of your background while you take a breath before we launch into it. So you have 15 years experience as a chartered accountant and a human behaviour expert. Now, in my books, those two don't often go hand in hand. So straight away, you're an enigma to me. So we'll be delving into that interesting combination. And as a business coach and founder of Mirato Coaching, you work with business owners, executives to maximize performance, both personally, professionally, and financially. And that is what has inspired the topic today that I'm curious to delve into. Can we really maximize people performance, keeping them happy, keeping them inspired and loving to be at work and working in your business, and maximize the finance and the operational side? So, because it does seem to be a very, very tricky area. So I'm very keen to delve into whether that is actually a pipe dream or whether we can actually achieve that. And so clearly you are passionate about helping people to reach their full potential and teaching them how to inspire and motivate themselves, but also their teams and the people around them. So, I'm curious to delve into a little bit about who the woman is behind this phenomena called Mirato Coaching, and these beautiful goals and aspirations that you have for what you're doing with your time and your business today, JR. So again, thank you for joining us. And so let's dive in. We've got about 20 minutes or so together, 25 minutes. But perhaps you could start with telling us a little bit about your business, who you serve, and what's the main problem that you help to solve for your clients.
Thanks, Leah. Thanks for those really excellent questions. So I'll try and remember all of them and answer all of them. So I'll start by saying Mirato Coaching is a real reflection of who I am as a coach. It stands for, and it's an Italian word, and it means targeted and direct, if you're wondering what Mirato means. And anybody who's spent more than 5 minutes with me will notice that I'm pretty targeted and pretty direct. So
talk about aligning your personal characteristics that are clearly your strengths and the values in your business straight off the bat. Fantastic.
Thanks, Leah. And so what do? I work with my clients who are predominantly business owners who've been in business for 5+ years. So it's a business that's been running. They're usually profitable, but they are often in high stress kind of environments. And why are they highly stressed? They're stressed by the people in their teams. They're stressed by trying to deliver things to their clients. They're stressed by managing the business. And really, they want to be able to step back to work on the business in a way that propels them forward, rather than being in the business continually. And my clients have got 10 plus team members. So it's not like they're working on their own. They are leaders. The question becomes, are you a leader and a manager? Are you a manager only? And how do you propel your business forward by looking at being both, as being in charge of the business you run? And are you willing to let go? So it's helping my clients let go, keep making profits, and keeping everyone happy.
So they've
And
got to let go. So it's
they've got to
not
let
about
go.
more control. It's actually, what's the other tagline? You've got to sometimes go slow to speed up, right? Because again, what I'm hearing is that manicness of trying to do everything and manage everything and control everything, but ultimately the mantle of leadership does rest on the business owner, and the biggest
Absolutely.
rewards rest with the business owner as well. And so there's a difference of the simple difference of ownership. You've got the business owner, and then you've got the people who are working usually for some kind of salary or a time for money trade, right? So
Yep.
you've got a difference in just what those internal motivations are. So I'm just wondering then, in a nutshell, if you said what was the key problem that people come to you to solve, how would you sum that up? Because there is a myriad of business coaches out there, JR, and what I love is your background with the numbers, because we all know that the person who owns the spreadsheet owns the business, right? The spreadsheet and the data and the database. And
Absolutely.
and so, we've got Karen Tisdall.
Karen Tisdall, I
Wow,
noticed.
welcome,
Hey,
Karen.
Karen,
Great
how
to
are
have
you?
Yes.
Great to have you here in the room. So, in a nutshell, it's taking a business that's doing okay to doing awesome. It's like lifting the game in every respect. It's away from having team members that don't deliver and moaning that, I've got this problem and this team member and this problem and that problem. And it's taking back ownership to the business owner and saying, I'm going to make this business amazing, and you're coming with me to make it even more amazing. And it's that. It's away from bitch and moan, and I'll say that word respectfully, and okay, how are we going to make this work? What are the things we need to take care of, we must take care of, in order to either it's growing, because most business owners want to grow, or it's listing, because some people have those aspirations for their organization, or it's how am I going to exit at some point and start my next adventure? Because for business owners, business is an adventure.
Yeah, I love that perspective of business is an adventure. And then I'm also hearing that the thing that's getting in the way is the people dynamics.
Yep.
I haven't heard that it's about rising costs or, too much inventory. I'm sure all of that features, but the core focus is what's happening in the dynamics between owner and people, and between the people and each other.
Absolutely.
And to that end, you've actually got a workshop that you're running on Wednesday. And if you're here with us today, then I have in the comments got a link where you can learn more about the actual secrets that JR's talking about here, about the how she helps businesses. And she's actually going to be sharing on the 5 strategies that are critical to business success. And again, as you've just heard, it's not what you think. So I highly recommend that stay with us for the next 20 minutes, but then absolutely get yourself registered. And if you let in the invite process, if you say you're a guest of JR or of myself, then you can actually come free of charge if this is the first time to a BBG Speakers group workshop. But so putting that on the table, that there is a way that you can go deeper into this how, the magic of how JR does her thing. So, but coming back to JR, the woman and the dynamo, my next question for you is, I guess, what inspired you to leave your 15 years in straight accounting and then actually start creating a business around, yes, the business side of business coaching, but very much on the people side and the people dynamics, the human behavior side? What inspired you to make that change, and how did you prepare?
So it's really interesting. I probably would never be described as your typical accountant. So that's the starting point. And something that I suppose I learned along the way, and this is really important when you run a different race, when you decide that you're going to do a different business. And that is, and this is a lesson that I would love your listeners to really lean into.
Yes, because a lot of people who tune in are executives who have that secret yearning, right, to start their own gig, or they really want more meaning in their work, or they've also been at it for a while and they're not getting the results they want, JR. Their team, they haven't got the team they thought they would. They don't have the revenues that they thought they would. They don't have a full book of clients, even though they've spent probably hundreds of thousands of dollars now on these coaching skills and profiling skills and all of that background that you and I know so well. And
sounds daunting.
So the practical aspects of, you've got the passion clearly on the one hand, but what preparation did you do to set yourself up for success?
I think the thing that I really want people to remember is not to release or disregard their past, because all the things, the lessons that you've learned, the training, the skilling up that you've got to, that's got you to here before you make your choice that you want to do something different, is so powerful. It's your magic power, your magic, your magic that you can bring that nobody else can bring. So when I started, you asked like what changed. When I started, I probably wasn't that interested in my accounting, and I've always loved and been interested and curious about people, which is my sweet spot, right? It's a natural thing for me. I'm a collaborator. I love working with people and sharing and really celebrating their success and challenging their limitations. So that's just, it lights me up. It always has. And so
you must be one kick-ass parent, if I may just chime in there.
Yeah, well, there you go.
What a fabulous like formula for for why the whys and hows of good parenting. Just saying.
Well, you'd have to interview the children separately, and I won't be held accountable, or I won't be accountable for anything they say. I will own whatever they say, but I won't be accountable for it. And really, so bringing all that in and loving people and loving their success. And when I started on this journey, it was like, I don't want to have anything to do with accounting. I don't want to think about numbers. And it was only when I brought the two parts of my incredibly, they're a skill, as you said, they're unique. The numbers and the people are unique, and they're critical in every single business, because no business will succeed if they don't have people, good people, aligned and valued people, and no business will succeed if they aren't making money, right? It's just not possible. And being successful and adding value. And so only when I brought those two together and recognized the power of both was I then able to excel and add value and serve my clients and make money myself.
Yeah, I'm really hearing you on that one with the contextual, like the context you're able to bring to that client conversation, and that I bet your clients will say, wow, you really get me, and we don't have to spend hours of time me telling you all about my business and all the things that need to happen for my business to work, because as an accountant, CFO, you've been the right hand leader for business owners that's your pedigree knowledge base. And
Absolutely.
How much time and what value, how much is that worth to a particular client? And we are talking about a very busy marketplace in terms of the gig economy and coaching, for example. And in the US, they predict by the year 2025, 60% of the US will be a gig economy, a freelancer economy, right? And that's usually where executives and corporates who have worked for a paycheck and now want to be their own boss, so, are coming out, and they start out being a freelancer. And then if that takes off, they can then be building their team of people to deliver. So were you a freelancer as an accountant, or were you an employee taking a paycheck before?
So I've held a couple of positions in that space. When I emigrated, which you can hear my accent, in '99, I worked as an employee, and then I did some volunteer roles, working as a honorary treasurer in my past world, and then went in and did all the financial work for a company. So I actually never worked as an accountant, as a contract role as such, or in that kind of gig.
So
I've
you've been an
actually,
entrepreneur through and through, it sounds like,
yeah,
JR.
yeah,
And
always.
yeah, see, and that's an interesting stance as well, which I think is another value add you bring your clients, because you've been self-generating and you upped your entire family and brought them to the other side of the world and have to start all over again. So there's a whole book just in that journey, I think, which I hope you're writing.
I'm not sure I'm not sure I'm writing it. I'm not sure I'm writing it. The thing that's interesting, Leah, yes, I did come out here on my own, but it wasn't on my own by myself. I came with my husband, and having somebody on your team that is fighting for the same goals, and whether it's in home or in business, it is about having somebody that is aligned, that's behind you, that is, just pushing you forward as much as you are pushing them. And, if you look at businesses do not succeed on the days where you feel, oh, this is too hard, it's difficult. You succeed because despite those days, you succeed because there's somebody on your side actually saying, you can do it, you've got this. And by surrounding yourself, Leah, you're also a coach, right? You work in the space. You know how there are some days where things just, for our clients, they get really, really challenging. And having somebody along on the road that's actually supporting them as much as more than they ever supported themselves, more than they could ever imagine, is the critical part of what makes a relationship with a client as a coach so incredibly successful.
That is such a great point. And Karen's just pointed out that she reckons that Australia will be looking at about 60% in terms of freelancers and giggers in the gig economy as well. And I think this is something that, like, because I work with a lot of founders as well, so women who have had a business idea, they've got some sales, and they think they're ready to scale, and they've literally done it all on their own. They've never paid $1 for coaching. And this is, I think, one of the things where coaching is such an experiential value proposition, that if we haven't experienced the support and then what it's like to have support and then not have support, I think for a lot of business owners that who haven't experienced the leadership coaching, that personal CEO coaching that you provide, JR, what is your experience with business owners in terms of their, I guess not their comfort level, but their willingness to actually pay on a retainer basis for that support and for that guidance? Like, do you have a certain criteria that works for you, that's an easier transition? Because I know certainly from my experience, can be a really difficult conversation for some business owners if they haven't invested in coaching before, to actually create a line item for this level of coaching that you're talking about, that is about that leader support, that the challenge and to challenge them when they need to be, to broaden their perspectives, to help them take a different view on how they're handling a conflict or viewing a particular thing.
So the most interesting part is not the money that gets spent, but it's the ROI. So it's the return on the investment. And really what tends to happen is, yes, people don't like listening to what they don't want to hear. And you asked me for something that's cheeky and disruptive.
Yes.
And my message to every business owner is stop listening to the things you want to hear. Because, like people who tell you what you want to hear do not propel you forward. People who tell you what you want to hear are often not necessarily saying the same thing when they're not with you, right? So they may say, there's that water cooler conversation. The boss you're sitting around a table, everyone's saying, rah, rah, yes, we're ready to go. And as they walk out the door, oh, this will never work. This is never going to work. And instead of so what does a coach bring? A coach brings, hang on a second, this may not work, but let's cover all the bases to make sure that it does work. Let's think about where the money's coming from, where the sales are coming from, who's going to deliver on this particular thing that you're embarking on. It's looking at everything as opposed to just having one or two people that are maybe not as informed. And I mean, as a coach, I work across the board with my clients, but I don't do everything. I'm not in the marketing space. So I'm not going to be talking to my clients about telling them about marketing or working in that space. I'll be referring to somebody that I think is amazing in marketing. Right.
So you'll be highlighting that this is a gap in the business that comes through your due diligence with them, but not necessarily solve every problem in the business. And I guess this is where, again, it comes back to every business coach is so different in terms of how we approach what we approach. And I think we are definitely moving into the special forces, as it were, and around what is your absolute secret sauce in how do you deliver ROI as a coach. And I think as coaches, we all have to get more savvy and language, that value proposition around what this investment in what we're calling coaching is going to deliver to your bottom line, because it's not a direct cause and effect. But there are certainly impacts whether you do invest or don't invest, that's for sure. And then how you even select a coach is a whole different thing. And I think that's why conversations like this, where already you have highlighted where you go in terms of how you problem solve, how you solve a problem, right? In how you received my question, right? It was all about, let's change the perspective of the question we're asking. We're not asking, can you afford to pay for a coach? We're asking,
can you afford not to? You're actually asking, can you afford not to?
Yes. And let's look at the ROI potential if you do decide to go down this track, because this is what I'm committing to you for, right? And that's a very different perspective that comes from someone with deep financial knowledge, but comfort with money and books and spreadsheets and bills and money coming in and not enough money coming in. So this is a whole other level of expertise. And I, again, because a lot of my clients I work with are women business owners, the money and the spreadsheets and the hardcore, let's look at the reality, is not their sweet spot. And it's not something they necessarily like to look at. So I'm absolutely, let's stop listening to what we want to hear, because as we say, coaching is about supporting and really being that person in your corner. But it also means that you as a coach will challenge your client if you feel there's a or you can see that there's a blind spot, or that there's denial, or that actually not looking at the hard truths is actually going to be like cause them to not have the ROI that the fancy pitch deck might, be predicting, right? Because we all have the fancy pitch deck of where we're going, but it's like, where are we now? And where are those holes and gaps? And what is the hinge that's going to swing the biggest door? So in terms of the biggest challenge you've had in your pursuit of bringing Mirato Coaching into the world, what's been your challenge, and how have you overcome that?
So, when you start out in business, the biggest challenge is always going to be your financials, right? And that's the reality of it. Like, people start businesses, and what's their challenge? How am I going to make money out of this? How am I going to make it sustainable? How can I add value? And what I'd like to term, how do I have a business, not busyness, which is like having a job, right? Like, how do I make that possible? And that requires a very intentional way about business growth. It also requires you to know where you want to go, right? Because some people don't want to create an empire. They don't want to create a situation where they have a number of people reporting to them. So your external gigs people, they're often people that just want to report to themselves, work their own hours, make things work for themselves, right? So it's in that deciding of where you're heading and where do you want to go. To me, that is a priority in terms of your business or your gig that you set up as a coach, right? I'm not talking about in a business, because when you start out a business, you're planning to grow it and add value and develop something that in the future you can leave behind, in whatever that means, whether it's for your family or to sell it to somebody else, but you've got to figure out what is it that you're trying to achieve. So your question to me was, how do you prepare for that business? You've got to talk about the numbers, right? And as you do that, it's a case of actually making sure that you've tested the waters, rather than just diving in and hoping for things to work. Because wishing, waiting, and hoping ain't going to get you there, right? They're just not.
So do your research, and really do that deep dive into why this matters to you and what is an outcome that's going to be meaningful to you. And I love it that you say it doesn't have to be this mega business, this multi-million-dollar thing with people reporting to you, or it doesn't need to be that. And I think that's another definitive that a lot of business owners get very sidetracked with, getting caught up in looking at what other people are doing, particularly in this busy world of social media and the internet. And so there are just so many different variables. But I have to say, it does surprise me the number of passionate entrepreneurs or wannabe entrepreneurs who want to build a business, that they're not understanding that there is investment to be made, both in their own education
Absolutely.
and the research and the support. Why would any of us, like particularly, I'm one of those ex-corporates that jumped ship and has and is making this business, a self-generating machine one day, and so I'm constantly learning, and I'm 5 years in, for goodness sake, and I feel like I'm just scratching the surface. So, but I personally, I'm just looking to where we've got another minute to go before our 30-minute stop, JR. So in terms of any closing words, I've put the link there to the 5 strategies critical to business success for your workshop on Wednesday morning, 8 a.m. Sydney time. And I do encourage you all, wherever you're listening from or watching, to come along and hear the 5 strategies there. So, but in terms of closing off today, what would be one thing you'd like to leave our our viewers with today?
I think I'll leave our viewers with the concept of you can't run a business, you can't be a leader in the business if you're ignoring a part of your business. You've got to look at the big picture. You've got to look at the details. You've got to have people on your team. You've got to have your pipeline sorted out. There's no part of the business that you can leave out. Now, you can outsource these things. You can employ people and engage them, but you can't leave anything and assume it's going to just happen. You've got to put your intention in as the leader, as the owner, as the director of your business. Just like everything in life, nothing just happens. It requires effort and energy.
And I think, like most things in life too, that when we have the support and structure, and there are strategies, there are tips, there are secrets that people who become more successful more quickly, or who are less stressed in how they're growing and how they're building their business, there are things we can do.
Absolutely.
And we don't know it all, and we can't be expected to know it all ourselves. And I think that's where I would encourage people to reach out for help, and come and join us on Wednesday to learn more about what JR does and how she weaves her magic with the numbers and the people. And I'm so ready for this, JR. I'm really looking forward to it myself, and I'm so grateful that we've been able to snag a few minutes of your time today. And I trust this has been useful for you as well, just to touch base with perhaps, how far you've come as well in these short years, relatively speaking. And of course, wherever you're watching from, do Google, put Judith-Rose Max in the search bar, and you'll find her on LinkedIn. For sure, that's your primary platform.
Yes,
JR,
LinkedIn, definitely. That's where business happens.
It is indeed. So
Thanks for the
without further ado,
opportunity. Thanks for the opportunity to chat here, Leah. Thank you.